Just going to give this a minute for people to come in from the waiting room. Welcome to the audience as people are coming in. All right, we're going to get started. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon or this evening for those of us who are joining us from some 7 hours away. My name is Jeremy Burton. I'm the Executive Director of the Jewish Community Relations Council of Greater Boston. For those of us who are concerned for the future of Israelis and Palestinians, the past many weeks have been a particularly difficult time. These were weeks of increased violence that claimed the lives of many innocent people. We are reminded that behind what we see in the media, the grief is very real for families, both Palestinian and Israeli, who are dealing with immeasurable loss. In times like these, we at JCRC derive hope from the efforts of thousands of Palestinians and Israelis who are working together in an array of grassroots organizations in pursuit of a more peaceful future. Through our Boston Partners for Peace initiative, we are committed to supporting those organizations by amplifying their voices and connecting them with local leaders here in Boston. One of these organizations that we are proud to be connected with and to support is the Parents Circle Family Forum. The Parents Circle is a group of bereaved Israeli and Palestinian families who have lost immediate family members due to the conflict and who channel their loss into activism for peace. With over 600 families involved, the Parents Circle believes that reconciliation is instrumental in reaching sustainable peace between the two peoples. Today, we are pleased to have with us two women who are part of the Parents Circle, Ikhlas Ishtaya and Tal Kfir Shor. Both Ikhlas and Tal have lost loved ones to the violence, and they have turned their grief to activism through the Parents Circle. Ikhlas currently lives in the village of Salem in the West Bank. Tal lives with her partner and her 5 children in Jerusalem. Their full bios can be found on our website, and we'll include a link as well in the chat. As always, there will hopefully be time for some questions and answers at the end of our discussion. And I invite our audience, as always, to use the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen to submit questions to me. Tal and Ikhlas, thank you for joining us today. And we'd like to start by hearing from both of you about your own personal journey and experience and how you became involved in the Parents Circle. We will begin with Ikhlas. It's an honor to meet you. Ikhlas.
Hello.
Ikhlas, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Good evening and good morning for those who are 7 hours in front of us or before us. It's of my great pleasure to share with you my personal story from far away as a person living under occupation in an area of conflict. It's my first time to be with the JCRC Greater Boston, and I'm very happy to be with them always. In fact, I am Ikhlas Ishtaya. I was born and is still living in a small village called Salem nearby Nablus, the West Bank. I was born in 1987 as a blind person for a poor family who has 6 children and their parents. I'm among those 6 children are me and my brother Muhammad, who are blind from birth. The first goal of my family was to bring eyesight for me and for my brother. They did the impossible, and they spent lots of money to seek or to bring us eyesight, but unfortunately they couldn't. Whenever they used to hear about any eye doctor in Israel, Palestine, and even Jordan, they rushed there, but with no benefit. We are three sisters and 3 brothers, as I said, and my father and my mother. When I was 5 years old, I was sent to a boarding school far away in Ramallah. And Ramallah is far away from Nablus, like 1 hour normally, but when you are in an intifada or there are closures and checkpoints, you need 2 hours at least. So it was impossible for me to go back home daily or to be visited by my family. In this boarding school, I spent the first 10 years of my education, where I learned Braille and all the basic sciences that any child needs. You already know that any child learns things through their eyesight, but unfortunately for me is the loss of sight had forced me to use alternative senses like touching and smelling and others. I had a warm family. They loved me and my brother from the beginning. They accepted our disability. As I said, they were seeking to find us eyesight, and they cared a lot for us. So when I was in a boarding school, it was the end of the first intifada in which I was born, and the beginning of the second intifada after a few years. And the second intifada had started while I still was studying in this boarding school. Actually, in this boarding school, I was exposed to lots of kinds of violence. Since my family could not visit me or the Palestinian National Authority cannot monitor what's going on inside the boarding school. Actually, our topic is not to talk about the violence that I was exposed to in my school, but what I wanted to tell you is that my family loved me. They used to visit me, to take me back home, especially my father. He was, at that time, he was working in Israel in a gas company in Rishon LeZion. And he worked there for 18 years. He used to put gas for the Israelis. He used to enter their houses and talk with them in their own language, as if it is his own language. At the beginning of the second intifada, my father was not able to take permit to go into Israel to work there for the company. So he was forced to leave the company. And as an alternative, my father took a driving license and he started to be a driver on the minor roads, on the checkpoints between Salem and another area called Nasariya. After 2002, I was 16 years old, exactly in the 10th grade. Now it was the time to leave the boarding school. I was very, very happy because I will leave the boarding school. I will leave my oppressors and the people who used to expose me to violence. Actually, my mother was afraid at the beginning, but as I know her, she's a very strong, wise woman. She accepted me going back home and studying in the regular schools for the last 2 years before the university. My father, as very much like my older sister, could rarely express themselves and their feelings. But at that time, exactly, my father was very happy because he will not go back into the checkpoints to be insulted by the Israeli soldiers by asking him, "You are from Nablus, why are you going to Ramallah?" And some such questions. Um, Finally, and fortunately, I left the boarding school. I get used more to my sisters and brothers. I used to go daily to the regular school with my sister in the same village. I don't need to go far away to learn and to be far away from my close associates and especially my family. In 2004, it was the last year in school, and I was preparing myself to go to the university. So everyone in the family was enthusiastic since I was very clever at school, and they expected high grade for me. I used to study a lot, and my parents were very happy and providing me with anything that I need just to study and to have the biggest goal of the family, to have a successful girl who goes to the university like any other regular girls. On Monday, the 27th of September 2004, we all wake up in the morning. My father woke up getting ready for his work as a taxi driver on the minor roads, as I mentioned earlier. I was getting myself ready to go to the school to continue my studies, preparing for the university. I didn't even tell him goodbye or give him a kiss, knowing that he will come back. But alas, the fate had gone against my expectations. In the afternoon, we came back from our schools and we were preparing ourselves to take lunch. My father was driving on the minor road and he was about to reach us to share the lunch with us, the meal that he ordered for the last time in his life. So my father was driving on the minor road nearby Salem, going to Nasariya. And when he reached one of the minor roads, there was an Israeli settler nearby our village, who lived in the settlement called Itamar. My father had drove his car until he reached this minor road, and the settler was holding his gun, standing by the roadside to monitor any Palestinian coming here and to shoot. And this was my father's fate. As soon as he entered the minor road, driving his car, the settlers popped up and stopped him. My father thought that the settler needs help. Since he used to speak Hebrew, he asked him, "Is your car not working? If you need help, I can help you." Actually, the settler deceived my father and told him, "Yes, I need help." And as soon as my father rode his car to bring something to help with, the settler opened the fire on him and he shot him a bullet which penetrated his hand and settled down in his heart. As a family, when we received the news, they firstly told us that he was injured, just to reduce the to reduce the great news. But after a few minutes, people started to come, groups of women and men in the village coming into our house and crying. When I heard those people are gathering around and inside our house, I started to run and crash with that door, crash with that door, crash with that wall. As a blind person, I used to crash with the floor, with everything. I used to crash with people and tell them, please tell me what's going on. With tears in their eyes, one of them said, your father now is a martyr. As soon as he was shot, he died instantly. And believe me, this moment was the real moment in which I lost my sight. At that moment, I said to myself, now you became blind. The eyes through which you have seen the life had gone. At the first week, I stopped eating, I stopped going to school, and I said, why do people walk? Why does the sun rise? Why does the sun set? Why do I have night and day when my father had gone away? Actually, I have a strong mother. In spite of her deep grief and the big responsibility that she has as a mother and a father now, she stood and is still standing by my side until she succeeded to get me back to my school. And when I gave farewell, to my father, I kissed his eyes and I promised him to be clever as he wanted me to be. In fact, I completed the last year with a big challenges, and I studied the BA. I succeeded in the school and studied BA and MA in English language, literature, and translation. At the beginning of the grief, my mother told us, I don't want to lose anybody of you. I know that the settler had murdered your father, and for us, we don't want to be having more violence by taking revenge, because revenge leads to more losses. So groups of Israelis started to hear about us, to come and to make interviews with us. And really, I had the opportunity to join the group of Israelis, which is called the Villages Group. Until 2015, Combatants for Peace and the Parent Circle Family Forum had heard about me and invited me to deliver a speech about my father in 2015 in the Memorial Day. And this is actually what I did. And from that moment, I am a very active member in the Parent Circle Family Forum. Actually, the Parents Circle Family Forum is an organization through which I found myself, and I feel free to express how I turned from thinking about revenge to be a nonviolent and peaceful woman. Actually, our organization was established in 1995 on the hands of Itzhak Frankenthal, a religious Jewish man whose son was murdered by Hamas, the Palestinian right wing. And he said better not to think violently. He started this organization which firstly started in Gaza, and then after 2000, Gaza, had taken by Hamas by force, and we started to be more active in the West Bank and inside Israel. So I was and still member and had benefited a lot from the narrative project, and whereby two groups of Palestinians and Israelis sit together, visit historical places in Palestine and Israel, exchange the narrative of each one of us, even though if we don't love it, but we respect it, and we learned how to hear to each other and respect the other's narrative, whether we like it or not. And this ongoing project is, very successful and still worked on by the forum. Also, we have the summer camps in which Israeli children, not children, teenagers and Palestinian teenagers spend few days together, cook together, exchange cultures and exchange activities together also every year, as well as the dialogue meetings in which we are now. So for me, being in the forum is a big pride for me and for my family. And actually, I am here for more people not to be bereaved, but to work for peace. And my also message to you is don't be pro-Palestine or pro-Israel, but be pro-peace for the health of the two societies. I am here because I don't want my son and my daughter to have the same experience of bereavement and to be brought up violently, because simply I don't want to lose them or their father. And thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Ikhlas. We're now going to hear from Tal.
So, hello.
Yes.
It's a very strange experience to talk to many people which I don't see, but let's see how it goes. So my name is Tal. I'm 44 years old. I live in Jerusalem with my wife and with our 5 kids. And I joined the Families Forum in the beginning of 2004. I was born in Ashkelon, which is on the seashore of Israel, kind of close to the Gaza Strip, but also to Tel Aviv, Ashdod, and other cities. I grew up in Ashkelon and went to art school there for some years. And then when I was in high school, I moved to a boarding school in Jerusalem, the Israel Arts and Science Academy. After high school, I went to the army. I was in the Air Force, and released from the army, I went to study in the Tel Aviv University for 2 years until I realized it wasn't for me. And I came back to Jerusalem and was accepted to the Bezalel Academy for Arts and Design, where I studied photography. I'm a photographer. In Ashkelon, where I grew up with my parents and with my younger sister, Yael. Yael was born when I was 4.5 years old. At first, I must admit we weren't best friends because she was 4.5 years younger than me. And as you probably know, the gap gets smaller as you grow up. So as young kids, I won't lie, I won't say we were best friends, but we were okay. And it was when she grew up and I grew up too, that we became closer and of course loved each other and things, but when I was in Bezalel, Yael finished her high school, and she, unlike me, finished all 12 years of school in Ashkelon, in the arts school in Ashkelon. But again, unlike me, she was very talented in mathematics and physics and other stuff like this. So alongside her high school years, she was studying in the Open University, making big plans for her future because she believed she can be an astronaut. And since she wasn't sure what will it take to become an astronaut, she studied mathematics and physics, but also history, just in case. When she finished high school, she went and joined the army, the Israel Defense Force. And I must say, from my point of view now as a grown-up, that when I was 18, it wasn't a question. It wasn't an option not to go to the army. I mean, some people probably didn't, but it wasn't where I grew up. It wasn't a question I was supposed to ask myself. I mean, that's what young Israeli people do in Israel. They go to the army once they finish high school. So that's what I did, and that's also what Yael did. She went to officers course in some sort of a direct route to officers course, and she served as an officer in the communication corps in the Tzrifin army base. And on September 2003, while she was already a few years inside in the army, there was a party planned in our old art school for the headmaster who was about to retire, and they invited the alumni and students to join the. I'm sorry, I lost my English. to join planning this party. And Yael, that wasn't, usually she used to stay in her army base all week long and come back home only on weekends. But on that particular time, she left the base in order to join this meeting. We didn't have Zoom meeting there. So she left the base in the early afternoon and was waiting for the bus to take her from Tzrifin to Tel Aviv and then to Ashkelon. On that day, a young man came out of his house and took a car. Someone took him by car. He arrived at Tzrifin junction. He saw that there are many soldiers waiting for the bus to take them home. He went out of this car with a handbag. The car moved on, went on, and he stood behind Yael and her friends and blew himself up. Yael was killed at once, along with other 8 young men and women that served with her that were friends, and around 20 or 30 people were injured, I think. That was September 9th, 2003, say 5 in the afternoon, 5:45. I was then a student in Bezalel, and I was working in the theater box office as a student. And in the box office where I worked, we had a TV set, and I saw that there was something wrong. Something is going on in this junction, that there was a terror attack. And I called Yael, and she didn't answer my phone. And I called my father, and he said, yes, I tried calling her too, but that's very normal. She doesn't answer our calls. They are probably hectic. They're, I mean, taking care of everything needs to be taken care of. She won't answer us now. And that was quite convincing, or at least I wanted it to be convincing. And it took a few hours, and I finished my work and went back home. And in this time, I tried again and again calling her, but there was no answer. And we tried both her cell phone and also her phone in the office. And no one answered us, actually, in the base. And it was closer to 7 p.m., I think, that I called my father again, and he said, come home. And I remember myself sitting there and telling him, okay, tell me to which hospital should I drive now? And he said, no, just come home. And it was the shortest drive from Jerusalem to Ashkelon for me. I did very fast with my partner, then my wife now. And for many, many years after that, I was unable to do this trip, to do this road from Jerusalem to Ashkelon, not driving myself. I mean, sitting next to her on this very strange, bizarre, and unreal trip. I couldn't repeat this for many, many years. And when we arrived in Ashkelon to my father's house, there were already, I'd say, I don't know, many people there. And we spent the night not sleeping. And the next day was the Yael's funeral. It was an army funeral with army people and many, many hundreds of people who came to be with us and to be with her. And the next 7 days, the Shiva, I guess most of you, or all of you, are familiar with this term. The Shiva was in my father's house. I should say my parents got divorced a few years earlier, and it wasn't my mother's house, but we were there, of course, together. Thousands of people came to the house. And it's a very strange situation to be in. I mean, we heard stories about Yael that we didn't hear before, and we didn't know. We received pictures of her from friends, and we learned a lot about her life that was separate from how she was when she was with us. And after the Shiva, after these 7 days, it was like a vacuum cleaner sucked all the air and all the oxygen from the house. I mean, people went back to their lives, and we were supposed to do the same in a way. And it was impossible. it took a few months before I could go back to my house in Jerusalem and to anything I knew. Ikhlas just said it was the day she got really blind. I mean, it was the there is an REM song, the end of the world as we know it, you know. So that's what it was for me. And after the Shiva and after the first months, we decided to put an ad in the newspaper, thanking all the people who came to visit us in these very strange days. And we signed the ad, "Peace will be our comfort." Because I don't think any of us was thinking about revenge as a real option. But still, it was it's not a usual thing to do. And that ad in the paper made it that a woman from the parent circle approached my father. She wrote him a letter and asked his permission to call him. And they spoke on the phone, and she introduced herself and introduced the forum and invited him to join a weekend seminar of the Families Forum. And my father told her, "Are you crazy? What do you want me to do there? I don't want to talk to the people who just murdered my daughter." And she was wise enough to say, "I invite you to come. I don't invite you to talk. I invite you to listen." And he went there. It was, I guess, it was in November, I think, 2003. And it wasn't much later after that, I mean, that he invited me to join one of these seminars. For me, the first time I went to a seminar like this was in February 2004. And I remember going into a large hall and seeing groups of people, circles of like conversation circles, I'm not sure what's the term. And I joined one of these groups. And at first I said, okay, I'll just listen. I don't know what they are talking about. I'll only listen and have an idea of what's going on here. And I remember myself sitting in this circle and hearing story after story and realizing I hear the same story again and again and again. I mean, the details were different, but the pain was the same and the tears were the same. And the people hugging each other were very, very alike. And I also remember myself saying, okay, I can do this. I can join this group of people. I can join the Parent Circle Families Forum and join the educational activities. Because if there is something about this group that makes it special, is that it doesn't want any new members. And I thought, okay, I can do it. And then peace will come. Well, that was 2004. And it didn't happen. I mean, I won't say hundreds of, but many tens of dialogue meetings like this, especially in schools. We are going to schools together, a Palestinian member and an Israeli member, and we tell our stories and we hear the high school students' questions. And for many of them, it will be the first time they will meet someone from the other side face to face. I mean, as an Israeli, I can tell you about myself. 2004 was the first time I met Palestinian people, not through TV, not through the news telling me that all Palestinians want to kill me. And that goes the same on the other side. A young Palestinian woman will only meet Israelis as soldiers in the checkpoint. She won't have a chance to meet a nice Israeli who cares about her. And a young Israeli woman won't have a chance to meet a Palestinian that she will engage in conversation with, because she'll always meet them, I'd say, as someone who works somewhere she studies, or as or again in the news. I mean, the only place I can think of which is different are the hospitals in Israel, where many Israeli Arabs work, and that's a very unique situation. So I can tell you more, but I think we can. We've been a while, and if we want questions and the comments, it will be.
Thank you both, and yes, our time is limited, but I want to start, but just, I recognize how hard it is to come on a Zoom and share this with an audience that you cannot get any sort of verbal, physical, visual, other kind of response from. And I just want to honor, on behalf of everyone who's on the Zoom, the appreciation to each of you for sharing both profound personal loss and profound truth in sharing your stories. There are so many directions I want to go in, and there are so many directions that people have submitted questions about, that maybe in our limited time, I want to start with something. Tal, you referenced this, and when we have the opportunity to bring groups of leaders from Boston to visit with Parent Circle members in the land, in person, it's a phrase I've heard many times before, which is that the Family Forum is the only group that doesn't want any new members. It's not lost on, I think, anyone here that we're having this conversation at a moment where there's been a lot of loss in the recent weeks, both Israelis and Palestinians, and there's been a lot of violence. And maybe, unfortunately, a lot of future members. So I'd like to ask both of you about the last few weeks, sort of how you've experienced it as someone who has experienced this loss, as someone who cares about this work, and how does it, and if either of you or both of you want to address, how do the unfolding events and the violence in recent weeks, which is not the first time there's been violence in the time that you've been involved, how does that affect and inform the work of the Family Forum right now?
The sirens are on your side, right?
That's in Boston. I'm going to put myself on mute again.
Okay, that's a unique situation. Okay, so I'll say, as you said, it's not the first time. And every time, every circle like this arises everything. And I believe it's not only for members of the Families Forum, but to anyone who lives here. We all live in a continuous, I'd say, PTSD situation, or not post, but active stress disorder. So I'd say we just continue to do what we are doing, because there is no, I don't see any other way. I mean, I'm not convinced that violence is better than pursuing peace and tolerance. And but I must say it's hard, and it's getting harder. I mean, as a young, when I joined the forum, I was only responsible for myself. And now, as I said, I have 5 kids. 2 of them are going to school. The other 3 are homeschooled, so it's a different thing. But my kids going to school, I worry about them. I worry when I decide that I won't take them to school, but they'll use the bus. That's not a normal situation. And I'm sure Ikhlas can give many how do you say, examples like this.
But both of your English is better than my Ivrit or my Arabic.
So the examples are various. So I guess what we can do is just do what we can. There's no, I mean, if I can sit here and talk to you and invite you to be partners of us and invite you to like Israel, even when it's not perfect, and to spotlight the places when we do wrong, I mean, that's what I can do now. I'm not going out to the streets and putting myself in danger or putting anyone in danger. But talking to you is something that I can do now. So that's what I'm doing. And I believe that's what we should do. Do what we can and not just freeze.
Ikhlas, I don't know if you're there. I think we're having some technical issues with your camera. So Ikhlas, we may have lost Ikhlas. So Ikhlas, if you are there, please jump in. I'm sure everybody here is eager to hear your thoughts as well on, I'm getting a note that we did lose Ikhlas. We got cut off. So hopefully we'll get her back, because I'm sure everybody here is eager to hear her perspective on recent weeks and how that, how she's related to that. While we're waiting for her to come back, and hopefully maybe we can talk a little bit about what gives you hope in this work going forward. Just take a few more minutes. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Okay. Okay, that's well. Okay, I can answer this.
I'm smiling because before we came on, I said, "Are there any questions I should not ask you?" And they,
no. It's an awkward question. I'll do my best. Okay. So, what gives me hope? The fact that I can talk to people, and some of them, maybe not all of them, but some of them will agree with me with the way I chose. And these can be both Jewish Israelis and or Palestinians. Another thing that gives me hope is the fact that my oldest daughter, who is now almost 16, she'll be in the summer program of another group called Hand of Peace. Maybe you know of it. It's a group that brings together Jewish Israelis, Palestinian Israelis, Palestinians not from Israel, and also young people from the United States. They are going to spend, I guess, 3 weeks in Chicago and San Diego and talk. I mean, that's hope. Being able to create new relations and new connections between people who, I don't know, might have been enemies, but have parents who will encourage them to join such groups. That gives me hope. So I guess anything like I said before, anything that is small enough for people to be able to do in their regular daily life and not give up.
I see we are fortunate we were able to get Ikhlas back. Ikhlas, if I
What
can,
was, please?
sorry.
Sorry, I disconnected. My son was about to fall down and I went and gave it to my sister. So I'm really sorry.
Please,
But
don't apologize. No apology. We're glad to have you back. I'm glad your son is not safe for the moment.
yeah,
If I could ask, might you be able to speak to the last few weeks, events of recent weeks, how you experience it as a parent circle member, as someone who's experienced loss, the question that we were just getting into before we lost you,
okay.
and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, just a small addition to what my colleague Tal had said. In spite of all those violent, events through the last weeks, I insist to do what I am doing because I'm convinced, and I believe in what I do. Although we make a very small change and might be the right win from both sides, not hearing to us and trying obstacles in front of us, but for us, it's a way to reach to reconciliation, because this is, our non-violent way. By doing this and speaking to more and more people, we convey our message and we convince others not to go through those violent ways. For example, when my father was murdered, maybe 5 years after that, my older brother and my blind brother, once threw stones on the army, on the jeeps of the Israeli army. My blind brother threw a stone on one of the soldiers and they really took him. But when I started talking to them about what we are doing in the forum, they really stopped. Now, and wherever in near Salem we have confrontations, they don't go because they don't believe in violence and they don't want to be lost like what was done for my father. Thank you.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we're coming to the end of our hour, and I feel like from the questions that have been piling up, we could probably spend another hour with you, but you've both been very generous and open. If I can just close by asking each of you, what is your message, your advice to Americans? I say this, the people here are mostly American Jews, mostly Jews who care very deeply about the future of the state of Israel. And also people who, to a point that Tal raised earlier, they have accepted the invitation to listen today. So with our few minutes left, I would ask each of you what you want this audience to listen to, and what would you ask this audience and challenge this audience to do coming away from this conversation? Ikhlas, you want to start?
Yeah, can I take the permission of my friend Tal?
Please.
Tal, can I speak before you, please?
Yes, of course.
Okay. For me, I want from the Americans to use alternative things. I want you as Americans, because I trust you. Of course, I've been to America once and I wish I could go there again. I trust you, the Americans, to listen to us more and more. and to invite more people from both sides to speak about their griefs and their hopes, and also to support us as a forum financially, if you can, and if not, in doing programs to exchange messages and exchange cultures between us as Palestinians, Israelis, and the Americans, as well as don't take care of what the media say, because not always the media gives you the accurate and the genuine of the what's going on in Palestine and Israel. They don't give you the real narrative. I want you as Americans to go beyond the scene and to listen more to personal things like what you are doing now, and to increase and continue your support to any joint peace organization in Palestine or Israel, especially the Parent Circle Family Forum. If you want us to go on and to keep opening our organization, please support us on all sides. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Tal?
So since I go second, I have two advices, two last things. And I also saw that someone in the Q&A asked how to bring us to your synagogue. So that's the easiest part. You go into the website of Friends of the Parent Circle Families Forum, and I'm sure you have all the info there. But that's not my advice. The first thing, since you said most of the people here are American Jews, will be to invite you all to, I'd say, encourage Israel not to give up the Declaration of Independence, which said, and I have it here written because I knew that was going to be one of the questions that I should be prepared for, not like the one with the hope you asked about. The state of Israel will be based on prospects of liberty, justice, and peace taught by the Hebrew prophets. I think that's a good start. Not for us, not to give up this declaration of intentions will be a good idea. And the other thing I hope anyone can take from this conversation will be don't wait. And when there is someone you love, just tell them you love them. Don't wait for later, don't wait for tomorrow, don't wait for a special occasion. Just tell them, I love you, I love having you in my life. Let's meet, let's do something together. And it's not because I didn't do it with Yael, but I really hope I had more opportunities like this. So that's my mind to you.
Well, that is from both of you very both powerful advice and a real profound challenge to us. I want to thank you both, Tal and Ikhlas, for sharing your stories with us today, for being so open and candid, and just putting yourselves out there day in and day out and having to retell some of the most challenging and hardest parts of your entire lives to offer us inspiration and a way forward. I'm coming back just to close to something that Ikhlas said in her opening remarks, and I think it goes to for us as American Jews and for us at JCRC and with Boston Partners for Peace, the fundamental core of this, which is what Ikhlas says, is that we don't have to necessarily love each other's stories, but we can respect each other's narratives. And a big part of the work for us is to support organizations like the Parent Circle and many other organizations that are focused on doing this work of respecting narratives and listening to the personal things, and our continued support for institutions that are committed jointly to Israelis and Palestinians doing this work. For folks here, there was a plug for it at the end, but for folks who want to support directly the Parents Circle and get involved and learn more, we will include a link to the Parents Circle's friends.org in the chat. And we'll also include it in a follow-up email for everybody signed up. If you want to engage your synagogues and other institutions in this work with the Parent Circle, that's a resource. You can also learn more about JCRC's work, including Boston Partners for Peace and the study tours we do for civic leaders to visit with groups like the Parent Circle. We'll include a link to that as well in the chat. And I would say that there are several other groups that we are actively engaged with, in which we had the honor of platforming over the course of the last year or so on these Zooms that are also doing this work, some with youth, various different groups. And I know that a lot of the activists we learned overlap between the Parent Circle and these other groups, because you're working in the schools and you're raising your own children to see the world and to see this work differently. So really, you can learn a lot more about that at bostonpartnersforpeace.org. And you can learn more about future JCRC programs by visiting our website, joining our email list, and we'll provide all that information in a follow-up email. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. It's been a real honor.